Hello, I'm Dr. Geotrau, and I'm here to tell you why playing video games is not a waste of time or a banal pastime, but you can actually learn a lot from them. Today, we are going on a trip to the land of Nippon, a beautiful land drawn in sumi-e style. We are going to review the game Ôkami. But before we continue, I want to ask you a big favor. If you like my videos, please consider subscribing or sharing them with your friends. It's just a click for you and it really means a lot to me. And let's start. Ôkami is a single-player adventure game developed by Clover Studio and published by Capcom. The game was originally released in 2006 for PlayStation 2, but was re-released later on as Ôkami HD for PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, Windows PC, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. For the current review, I am playing the HD version of the game for Windows PC. As usual, I will review the story of the game and do a brief analysis of the narrative. Although I try to do this as general as possible without saying anything about the ending of the game, this part might contain spoilers. So if you want to avoid spoilers, please jump to this place in the video. And let's go! You play as Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun, in the form of a big white wolf. Amaterasu is being called to the land of Nippon by the weary spirit of Sakuya in order to help fight the corruption that is spreading on the land. Sakuya was once a powerful spirit who protected Kamiki village while inhabiting the now dead Sakura tree at the top of the village. The roots of Sakuya's tree extended throughout the land and gave saplings which helped protect Nippon. However, the now spreading corruption has killed the saplings and the land is being attacked by imps and oni. Together with Sakuya, there is a Ponkle, a thumb-sized creature called Issun. Issun is a wandering artist looking for different brush techniques that can allow him to perfect his work. For this, he uses a sacred brush called the Celestial Brush, which gets its powers from great spirits represented by the Chinese zodiac animals. Issun teaches Amaterasu, who he calls Ami, the Celestial Brush techniques, and together they embark on an adventure to save Sakuya, the Kamiki village, and Nippon. Ami realizes that the inhabitants of Kamiki village think she is the reincarnation of Shiranui, an old wolf hero which, together with Nagi, defeated the 8-head demon, Orochi. During this adventure, she also finds a person, Susano, who proclaims to be descendant of Nagi, but who resembles more a lazy drunkard instead of an actual hero. Susano is really not helping the Kamiki village, or Nippon, to get rid of the corruption, so it is up to Ami and Issun to save the day. Your first mission and adventure is to purify the lands of Nippon and rejuvenate the Sakura saplings that come from the roots of Sakuya's tree, so she can overlook and protect the land once more. But as you can imagine, this is not an easy task, and you have to travel all around Nippon looking for the different brush spirits, which are hiding in constellations, in order to progress. You travel to different regions of Nippon: the prayer, the cave, the lake, the bamboo plains, the Kusa village, and the bamboo forest. In each of these regions you find different people with problems, and you must help them overcome them both to progress, but also to gain praise, which can be used to level up Amaterasu's powers, such as the amount of ink you can use or your overall health. During your trips, you meet a wanderer traveler who plays the flute, Waka. In the beginning, he is testing your power and challenges you to duels when he finds you. Later on, he just comes to make witty comments, give you hints, and speak in French. Before confronting Orochi, you need to go through 2 dungeons ruled by Orochi's minions. They have been helping to spread the corruption of the land, and you need to defeat them in order to help heal it. In the Poison Cave, you find the Spider Queen, and in the Gale Shrine, you find the Crimson Helm. After defeating Orochi's minions and rejuvenating the land, you find out that the cause of corruption is Orochi. It turns out Susano, tired of being charged with the responsibility of being a Nagi descendant, defiled the Orochi shrine and resurrected him. Orochi comes with all his strength and captures Kushi, Susano's beloved one. But Susano is too scared and ashamed to go and save her, so he hides while drinking all the special sake brew which is needed to defeat Orochi. So again, it is Ami and Isun's duty to save the day and go and defeat Orochi. To do this, you go to Orochi's temple, which is ruled by imps. There you are given the opportunity to draw your own Oni mask, which is a lot of fun, and its design will appear later on in different parts of the game. To meet Orochi, you need to gather some ingredients for his dinner, and you can only confront him after his dinner is ready. After defeating Orochi, a black cloud appears and disperses. The peace is restored to Nippon while Sakuya recovers her youth and the sakura tree blooms, protecting the land and the Kamiki village once more. After you save Kamiki and Sakuya, you continue your travels towards the west and find out there are other problems with the land as more corruption is spreading. In the city of Seian, a poisonous gas is making everyone sick, and at the beach, the god monster that protects the water has gone crazy and tried to kill the fishermen. Here you meet with the priestess of the city, Rao. Rao takes you to a sunken ship to recover a powerful treasure the Princess Himiko needs to cleanse the city. It turns out the poisonous gas is being created by the king in his sleep. He is possessed by an Oni, Blight, and you have to become very small and go inside the king to kill the demon inside him and get rid of the poisonous gas. Here you have the opportunity to see how Isun really looks like. After this, you meet with Princess Himiko, who tells you that a big force of evil has resurrected in the faraway place of Oni Island, a site where the demons live and which appears at a different place every day, making it impossible to find without clairvoyance. But you cannot go to the island with the water god monster attacking you, so you go and visit Otohime, the princess of the mermaids who is protecting the water. You learn that the monster who was protecting the village has gone crazy and help Otohime defeating it, restoring the peace. After this, you return to Princess Himiko and obtain the location of Oni Island. With the help of Otohime, you arrive to Oni Island and destroy the Oni Nine Tails, who wants to rule the land, only to realize afterwards that this is part of an even bigger scheme. After you destroy Nine Tails, you go to the very west of Nippon, the land of Kamui, which is dark and covered in ice. Kamui is going to be destroyed because the sun has been shining less and less after you defeated Orochi, and the final day will come soon, when a sun eclipse comes and the land will freeze for good. There you meet Oki, a reckless guy who in his desperation to save the village stole their sacred treasure and is going around trying to gain enough power to awaken it. To stop the land from freezing, the villagers of Kamui need to carry out a ritual. The ritual should be carried out by this girl priestess, but she has disappeared. So again, Ami and Isun have to save the day. In your trip, you find the Punkle village, where Isun is originally from, and learn his story. You also find a door which you cross and end up in the past. To shorten the story, you need to defeat Orochi once more in the past in order to save the girl priestess and return to the present. After this is done, you have to go to the mountains and defeat the two last bosses, Lechtu and Nektu, which are the ones freezing the land and casting a perpetual darkness over the Kamui village. After you defeat them, the ritual can be performed, and from the frozen lake comes the Ark of Yamato, a big ark which is said to be a vessel of celestial beings that was overtaken by Oni, who used it to travel to Nippon and try to take over the land. So you finally discover the force behind all of this, Yami, a powerful demon who smuggled himself and his servants in the ark, killed the Celestials, and went to take over the land of Nippon for himself. Once more, Ami, with the help of Isun and all the celestial brush techniques, battles the evil, beating Yami for good, and finally saving the land of Nippon before returning to the celestial plane. The narrative of the game is really the story of the hero, but mixed with a bit of stereotypical RPG narratives, such as the structure of the Legend of Zelda games, combined with plenty of humor and a progression curve that is a little bit difficult to pinpoint. The hero narrative comes from how Amaterasu is summoned to Nippon without major powers in order to save the land. To do this, our hero needs to grow, confront challenges, and help people, which will strengthen her and allow to move a step forward into the next arc of the story. Eventually, the narrative of search and growth follows a big arc with the final defeat of a big evil and saving the land. The Zelda-style narrative comes in the way the arcs are constructed. First, the game makes you believe that there is one mission, to destroy Orochi. And in order to fulfill that mission, you need to take certain steps. For example, kill some of his minions, which will grant you the power to face the final challenge. However, after you face this challenge, you realize this was not the actual story, and you pretty much were tricked into helping the bad guy with your actions. This marks the first grand arc as a long adventure tutorial. Another element taken from Zelda-style games are the division of the story into pre-dungeon challenges, dungeons and bosses, which follow a escalonated structure of self-contained stories which are tied together to fit the bigger story arc. Then the real story starts. You have to redeem yourself and undo all the bad that you inadvertently did in the first arc, now within a more convoluted and longer arc, which ends up in the final defeat of the mastermind behind the evil done to the world. This last part is what makes the progression curve of the story difficult to pin, as you have so many small missions and so many arcs, including the initial trick one, that revolve around a main and big arc. In addition, you have parallel stories taking place, such as the story of Susanoo, your relationship with Waka, and the time travels of Shiranui. Adventure games like Ôkami are great to foster different cognitive skills, such as planning, pattern finding, strategy making, exploration, fine motor skills, and narrative. Although I think the game does a very good job tapping on strategy making and pattern finding, planning is really the skill you use the most when you play the game, so I have to make it my priority for the video. Planning in the game is a bit chaotic and will require the most from your short-term memory, working memory and perspective memory, as well as your inhibitory control. But let's talk about that in parts. Short-term memory is your memory of events that happen in a close past. They will probably not stay with you for a long time as they are not super important. These events have been encoded and can be retrieved within a certain amount of time, after which they start fading. A good example of this is when I asked you what you had for lunch yesterday. You probably can't remember that information. However, if I asked you what did you have for lunch on Monday last week, you probably don't remember, as for you to remember events farther in the past requires you to use other types of memory and brain circuits. In Ôkami, you use short-term memory when you leave the game and retake it, so you remember what you have been doing, what to do, the controllers, and the story. You also use it to keep a continuity of the story, such as remembering places and names, and memorizing and navigating the maps. Working memory is the memory of the series of actions you are carrying in order to fulfill a specific and immediate goal. For example, when you are cooking and remember which ingredients you have already used, so you don't overdo it with certain spices. In Ôkami, you need to keep track of what you have done in order to fulfill a goal. For instance, you know you have to go from Kamiki to Kamui, so when you open the map to navigate, you know you have to go to Kamui and not to somewhere else. Prospective memory is our memory of the future plans, and you use it to keep plans of your objectives, or a list of to-dos to fulfill a specific goal. For example, if you need to get a brush technique in order to progress in the game, you will have a list such as go to Kimiki, talk with the dog, return to Kusa, talk with Fuse. And you will be remembering these things so that you don't repeat steps you already did or try jumping to the goal without fulfilling its requirements. Inhibitory control is your ability to control impulses of doing things that might change the course of your plans, delay them, or let you forget about them. For example, suppose you are doing a big mission in the game and need to go to the plains to help Susanoo. But in your road, you find this person that needs help with something else. Your inhibitory control will prevent you from helping this person and instead continue and focus towards your goal of helping Susanoo. As you can see, both the story and the mission structure of the game are tapping on planning all the time. And this is just used so much in the game that you cannot play it without it, thus making planning one of the most important cognitive skills in the game. Pattern finding is an amazing skill tapped by the game, and this is done mostly by means of the boss battles. Each boss has different but regular patterns that you need to read, learn, and forecast in order to make the correct moves. Jump, attack, defend, run. You will have to do some reading of what the boss is doing, as well as some trial and error on what each pattern does, and sometimes looking around you and playing with the environment to help you deal with the challenge. You cannot easily defeat a boss if you do not detect and learn their patterns and pattern changes. The game also gives you special fighting bonuses if you fight imps without receiving damage, doing it quickly, or finish them with a special brush technique. All of this is also part of trial and error, exploration, and pattern finding. Strategy making is also present in the game. Strategies in the game are linked to the celestial brush techniques, the different types of weapons, and the techniques you can learn in the dojo. There is a total of 16 brush techniques, plus some enhancements to some of the techniques you already have, and different bosses and enemies will be weak against some of them but not against others. Moreover, enemies might be weak against a technique at a certain moment, for instance when they are attacking, but not at other moments. The game also portrays 3 types of weapons: reflectors, swords, and rosaries, each of these weapons having different types of damage, playing styles, and techniques, which can at the same time be combined to give the player different types of power-ups or combo possibilities. So, finding out a good weapons combo and perfecting the way you fight with them is part of the strategy to fight imps and to get bonuses, and to defeat bosses in a quick way. But the strategies do not finish there, as you can also learn different techniques in the dojo, which can lead to different effects when combining weapons, more powerful combos, or different strategies to defeat certain enemies. Exploration in the game comes from 2 fronts. First, we have the map exploration. As the world is semi-open, there are lots of things to do, and just going around trying to reach new places and using your brush techniques to open new paths can prove challenging, and rewarding when you find a new weapon, or a new type of animal you can feed just to see the cute cutscene that triggers. Second, we have the boss fight exploration. It is when you explore different patterns during a boss fight, for example, which attacks make the boss vulnerable, which techniques are more effective, or when attacking the boss will play against you. This exploration will lead to pattern finding and the creation of the best strategies to defeat enemies. Fine motor skills in this game are a bit different from other games we have analyzed, as it doesn't only come from moving around, aiming and fighting correctly, but it comes from moving the celestial brush to make techniques. Drawing a circle using a joystick is really not as easy as you might think. Apart from drawing the correct lines, you also have to draw them in the correct way. For example, in some scenes, if you do not draw the line directly over the enemy or take too long to do it, you fail and need to repeat the whole process again. Finally, we have the narrative. We have already seen other videos of games focused on narrative, but this game is particularly interesting. First, because it is very long, so the narrative goes beyond what we have explored so far. Second, because the game has many arcs, parallel stories, and time travel, which gives the story a lot of secondary elements to explore. And third, because with all the parallel stories and time traveling, the game narrative gets particularly convoluted and can be hard to understand. So exploring the narrative can be interesting, but only if you have the time and will to do so. Ôkami is an amazing game concerning character, music, and graphic design. However, what really captures the attention of the game is its graphic design. Not only the sumi style of the game is really beautiful and captures us, but the fact that we can ink paint as part of the mechanics of the game really enhances this aesthetic feeling. Concerning the level design, the game presents us with a semi-open world, meaning that the maps are pretty open and full of exploration and secrets in every corner. However, it is not a totally open world like we can find in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. The story is also pretty linear, with some areas being impossible to reach unless you have fulfilled certain requirements or missions. The game is also full of backtracking, as there are areas where you are presented with obstacles you cannot beat until you get a certain brush technique, which forces you to revisit places you have been once you have acquired a specific technique or have improved one you already have. The game also introduces these obnoxious platforming puzzles, where you are given a certain amount of time to reach the bottom of a well while protecting and helping a person reaching the bottom with you. These puzzles are stressful, and as you do not really have control over the person you need to help, you will probably have to repeat them more than once. Apart from the open world, we also have dungeons in the style of the Legend of Zelda games. Each dungeon has its own challenges, many times ending with a big boss you have to defeat in order to progress in the story. The bosses are also designed in phases, where you have to make your way to weaken the boss until you can deal a big blow. Many of them follow the common formula of 3 is the charm, changing the pattern a bit after every blow, but also portraying a discernible action pattern and a strategy to figure out and follow in order to defeat them. The character design is interesting. On the one hand, their graphic concepts based on sumi-e paintings are very nice and charming. But on the other hand, there are many characters and only some of them are deep enough that we can connect with them. In addition, many of the characters are portrayed as comical, so even though you can get familiar with their stories, you do not take them seriously. As there are so many different characters, I will only talk about the recurring ones which appear mostly in the first arc. Amaterasu is the goddess of the sun. She is being called by Sakuya to help her clean the land from corruption, just as Shiranui did in the past by defeating Orochi. We don't know more apart from this. She is extremely expressive for a wolf, and can fight very well. In addition, she has the power to use the Celestial Brush in her fights. The Celestial Brush can alter reality to give Amaterasu an advantage in fights. The graphic design of Amaterasu is outstanding, with flames painted in sumi-e style on her back and flowers blooming on her step whenever she walks. Izun is a punkle and used to live in the forest by the Kamui village a long time ago. We learned that he was trained to be an artist that will help the world when the time was necessary, but he couldn't stand the pressure and went away looking for the brush techniques by himself. He is a comic figure who often comments on women's appearances, particularly their boobs. Although we usually see it as being some sort of ladybug, when we have the opportunity to see Izun closely, he resembles more a teenager that wants to be a samurai. Waka is a weird character. He comes now and then challenging Amaterasu and talking about visions of the future in riddles. But I really like this scene where he dances tango with Amaterasu. Sakuya is a reference to Konohana Sakuya Hime, the goddess of Mount Fuji and the blossoms. She is the one calling for the help of Amaterasu now that her tree is dying and she cannot protect the land. She first appears as a lady and then as a young maiden after her saplings have been rejuvenated. Susanoo is the descendant of Nagi. He is pretty stupid and self-centered. He is a lazy drunk. During the game, we follow him on his journey trying to ditch his family ascendants. He doesn't want to deal with the responsibility of his heritage, and we witness his very fall where he isolates himself and drinks all the special brew distilled to beat Orochi. However, we also see how his love for Kushi, the sake brewer, makes him come to his senses, accept who he is, and finally beat Orochi. With a bit of help. Orochi is an 8-headed Oni. Each of his heads has the power of an element: fire, earth, poison, light, lightning, water, wind, and darkness. The legend says that every year he chose a maid to be sacrificed to him, until the day Nagi, with the help of Shiranui, destroyed him. However, he's been resurrected, and now it is up to Amaterasu and Izun to defeat it. Orochi is cool looking and can be a bit scary the first time you see it. However, his fights are pretty much long and boring instead of difficult. The worst part of this is that you have to fight it 3 times during the game. Finally, there is Onigiri Sensei. I think this is my favorite design in the game. Onigiri Sensei is the sensei of the dojo and teaches new techniques to Amaterasu in exchange for a few coins. The cool part of Onigiri Sensei is the design of his face. When you meet him, he just looks like this nice old man who is just enjoying life and relaxing after retiring. but when you hire him, his face rotates 180 degrees and transforms into a very angry man. It is actually a popular optical illusion technique, but it really got me when I saw it for the first time. Needless to say, the most fantastic and impactful part of the game is its graphics and animations. The director, Hideki Kamiya, and the designer, Hiroshi Shibata, made an amazing piece of art portraying a Sumie world that comes alive in front of our eyes. Just for the record, Sumie is a type of brush painting using washed black ink, which creates a sensation of flow and zen inside the painting thanks to the different ink concentrations and gradients it generates. The aesthetics of the game and the art style are of an almost zen beauty, and there is nothing more rewarding than the animations of the world blooming in front of you after you have healed a sapling, or the contemplative nature of the scenes where you befriend animals by giving them food. The music and sounds of the game are honestly awesome, aiming for a traditional Oriental and Japanese music style, introducing the sounds of taiko and koto, both in the background music, in the music of the cutscenes, and particular sounds of the game like when you find an object or fulfill an objective. Let's hear a bit from it. Now, for as much as I love the sound and music of the game, there is something I really hate, and that is the gibberish voices. Normally I am fine with gibberish voices, depending on the game, but the voices used in Ôkami are seriously annoying. They sound like playing a broken album of the Chipmunks backwards. Just listen to this. And then you have very long dialogues that you can barely skip because you want to read and learn the story. But then you have to gobble up all the annoying gibberish voices of each of the characters at all times. As you already know, games may contain different layers that we can read. In the case of Ôkami, these layers do not come as a metaphor. Instead, they come as a reinterpretation of a mythos and a story about growth and friendship. The game is full of Japanese mythic elements. For example, Amaterasu Ôkami is the goddess of the sun and one of the main deities of Shinto. Amaterasu has two siblings, the moon god Tsukuyomi, which appears in the game in the form of a sword given to Amaterasu after defeating Orochi, and Susanoo, the god of storms, which is a reference to Susanoo in the game. In the Japanese mythology, Susanoo also defeated the eight-headed, eight-tailed dragon serpent, Yamata no Orochi, which is a reference to the big Oni Orochi in the game. We also have the protector deity of the tree, Sakuya, which is a reference to Konohana Sakuya Hime, the goddess of the blooming flowers. And how can we forget that the celestial brush techniques are being kept by the 13 animals representing the Chinese zodiac signs? Regarding growth and friendship, we find these in almost all the characters. Amaterasu grows in power by defeating the evil of the land and gathering praise from helping people. Izun grows by learning new celestial brush techniques, but also grows as a character by accepting his destiny and helping Ami in the fight against the ultimate evil. Equally, we see the friendship between Ami and Izun grow. And although sometimes it requires them to make difficult decisions or confrontations, they are constructing an everlasting friendship. You can also see growth in Susanoo, who, after running away from his ascendants and even trying to kill himself by confronting powerful monsters, accepted his destiny and gave it all to save the woman he loved. Ôkami is an amazing game. It has a very nice story, it has awesome graphics and amazing music. But what really is problematic of the game is its length. It took me around 37 hours to finish the game, and not because of the main story, but because of the repetition of missions that I had to do. With that said, Ôkami is a wonderful game in general. but it really overstays its welcome. The game could have been perfect if it was just the main mission defeating Orochi. So the extra bosses really feel like an extra drag that shouldn't have been there. On top of this, we have the repetition of bosses. During my gameplay, I had to beat some bosses twice, not to count the Spider Queen and Orochi, which I had to defeat 3 times each. And Orochi's fight is a particularly long, cumbersome and repetitive 2-phase fight. And having to do it 3 times was not fun at all. There is also the problem with the narrative. At a certain point, you are required to travel to the past, which somehow influences the story and at the same time not. Then you find Shiranui traveling to the future to help you. This doesn't make sense and makes things unnecessarily confusing while not contributing to the story apart from making it longer. Having said this, if you want to use the game at school, I suggest you not to use the game to the full extent, but maybe only the first part, until you have to beat the Spider Queen, or even Orochi. If you want to use it at home, it is fine. You and your children will have a long time to go through the story without hurrying, and your children might actually find it fun to beat Orochi 3 times, as you only have to figure out the strategy once. So how can we use this game at home or school? Well, the first thing I have to say is that if you're playing the game at home with your children, you will have no problem at all. You just have to let the child play according to their schedule. The problem actually comes when you are playing the game at school, mostly because of the length of the game. If I were to use the game in a school setting, I think I will keep the game down to the first arc to defeating Orochi. Maybe even less, just to defeating the Spider Queen. The cool thing about the game is that you have to use all the skills I talk about in order to progress. So you don't have to do anything special in order to foster or tap into these skills. They will just organically emerge while the child plays. It's difficult for the child to figure out what is happening or to keep up with all the reading. So it might be a good idea to make some questions about the story in general, or to summarize certain aspects of them so we are sure that they are understanding it. Pattern finding and strategy making in the game are great. The problem here is that it comes mostly from the boss fights, and there are not so many boss fights in the game. So an idea for you to foster it a little bit more is to ask the children about the patterns they have found and the different strategies they are doing, so they can rationalize more their acts and be more conscientious about what they are doing and the strategies they are implementing. A parallel activity you might want to try is to develop your own problem situations in the classroom, situations where children have to look for patterns in order to achieve a goal or solve a problem. Take the game, play it, embrace it, and give it to your children or students, and enjoy this beautiful Sumie painted world of Nippon, and the flowers that bloom under Amaterasu's pose when she's running. If you find my videos interesting, please leave a like or a comment, and consider subscribing to my channel for more content.